Hello, everyone. We are continuing on a Wolfram language design review meeting, one of our language completeness and consistency series, probably a bunch of things heading into the version 13.2 release that we are currently very actively working on.
Right, so this is a really minor point, but it wasn't something we explicitly discussed, so I thought it was worth bringing up. So right now there's a usage message which says, definition of string symbol prints as the definition if symbol exists. And it used to give an error message if the symbol didn't exist, but how do you tell apart a string that's just a literal string pattern and, a string that's a symbol that doesn't exist? So, I want to just excise that second usage and only leave in place the, you can give it a symbol or a string pattern.
Okay, here's the thing. I think that's okay, but I think we got to have something displayed in the output here, even if it's a blank thing, because it's just too weird. It's kind of like, it's kind of like the computation left the building type thing, and nothing was left.
Speaking of left the building, I just had a full out machine crash for no clear reason. So if anything was said to me, I missed it.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Right. Although I would point out that's not, new behavior, right? I mean, if you did definition of,
Oh, so you're saying it was this behavior before, but the point was it have a message before. So you're not like completely confused about what the heck's going on. Right. Could we not have some kind of iconic thing there that just says there's nothing here? Like
right,
an empty...
well, maybe. But my point is, right now, if you did, definition of the symbol fubarity, you'd get that same output because there are no definitions attached to that symbol.
I mean, there's some argument that maybe as a front end thing, we could have an indicator anytime an empty string is returned.
Is that an empty string that came back? Or what
no, it's it's just formats. So
why is it not an empty list? Because doesn't definition usually return like a list looking thing?
No, definition formats, and then that's sort of, it's sort of sharing the code with save, right? So it's sort of printing how things, right? And if you add some attributes or whatnot, right, or options.
Right. And it'll say.
Right, and then you can copy and paste that into your package file, right? And it'll work.
So maybe it could just have a comment that it returns a string with a comment, or formats with a comment that says like no definitions or something like that.
Yeah, that's possible, right? I mean, I don't think we'd want to do that for every single, right? If you give it multiple symbols, right, we wouldn't want to print one of those for every single symbol. But if the net result is that there's
nothing
at all,
it could just be some little gray thing. What's a good indicator of nothing? I mean, look, if we had a little gray indicator of nothing and it has a hover effect that says no definitions found or something, then we're good. Okay. Otherwise, it's just obscure what's going on. So we need from graphic design some kind of thing. I think it's like a light gray box or something. I don't know what. Anybody got a better idea for that?
Symbol for empty set?
No freaking way, other than for pun value.
We have Jeremy and Billy here as well.
Oh, really? Okay, well, maybe they have an immediate idea.
I mean, I'm not sure why we'd want something graphical as opposed to like, I think the comment of the suggestion of a comment which saying, no definitions seems like, the obvious and understandable.
Why? I mean, this is just a formatting thing. I mean, you're saying, well, you're never going to copy the thing that says no definitions. Oh, I see. Are you saying, okay, hold on. If I run this, and then I say input form of definition of F,
then you're going to see definition of F, I think. Oh, okay. So an input form, it still formats that way.
But we have to be careful about that because we don't want something that's an argument for the comment idea, because it means it would obviously format there.
Mm-hmm.
maybe the iconographic thing we want is a gray, like empty comment with a mouse over that says no definitions. And then when you say, because I mean, let's just try this. I mean, if I say this, and now I say input form, oh, that's really obscure. How many things input form? How many things have a, that's really obscure. This presumably is definition, but this is obscure.
Right. I mean, it was an intentional decision, and maybe at one point, from well before from the 80s, I think.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if there's some reason for this that I'm not immediately remembering.
Look,
well,
I
think
think
that the input form is
comment,
pretty wedded to being text. I mean, in the input form, it seems like there really isn't any better alternative than the comment.
I agree. I mean, I have a bad feeling that this is, like save definitions and all kinds of things like this. There's all kinds of programmatic things that use this.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe when there are no definitions to save, it wants to have a null string there. Okay, look, your original question, I don't have an objection to it.
Yep.
This question of what we should return when there's nothing to return, I think it's a bit hostile to return absolutely nothing here with no indicator of any kind. And I would recommend that in standard form, the thing return a gray blob. In input form, maybe it should return a null comment or no definition or something like that.
How weird would it be if it just returned the symbol?
That's not a good idea, in my view. Something's going to blow up if we do that.
Right. So here's a question. What about definition of empty list?
You mean what does it do now, or?
Well, I'm pretty sure that right, because you can give it a list of symbols. I'm pretty sure.
Look, I have a bad feeling it's going to break code if we change this input form of, sorry, what were you saying?
Well, hopefully not if it's a comment, but I mean, but I was going to say, what does toString of definition of blah, blah, blah do? Because that's probably the programmatic way people would access it.
I'm sorry, toString
of definition of, empty list or whatever.
Right, because there are no symbols for it to return there, right? If you give it, like plot, the list, plot 3D, then it would give you the attributes and maybe and I guess options of plot in plot 3. Okay, because it's read protected, so just the attributes, right? So if you give it an empty list, then there's nothing for it to return to you.
Yeah.
So.
Look, I don't think this is deeply broken. It's probably been this way for 30-something years. I think it is hostile to not give any message. I would recommend in that case we at least give some kind of blob that has a hover effect.
All right, we can look into that.
Okay. Should we go on?
Sure.
Opening a package to a specific line.
Right. So this is also, I think we all agree that it would be great if we could open a package file to a specific line.
What about a notebook? What about a notebook? What about opening a notebook to scroll to a section? I would love that.
Notebook locate.
So you open it and then you do a notebook locate. So don't you?
No, notebook locate can open as well.
I didn't know that. Okay.
But yeah, notebook locate given a cell tag, assuming, of course, that cell tag is either unique or its first appearance is the thing that you want to scroll to. then
Right.
yeah. that
Right.
works.
So yeah, and just so we're all on the same page, right? We've always had the ability to scroll to a specific cell. I don't know that you can, well, it's hard to sort of dictate the exact part of the cell, and I don't know if you can scroll to a specific part of a cell.
No,
Right, but this is in the package editor where it has lines.
Exactly. And so now that we actually have line numbers in the package editor, even though we don't have the ability, John says it would be at least, right, we can at least scroll to the cell containing that line. Now, if that one cell is 5 pages long, then
Yeah.
but we can get into the general vicinity.
I mean, but look, the whole issue with the new annotated parser type thing will get us closer to being able to have line number annotations and so on.
well, I mean,
Sure.
but the point is that we have line numbers in the package editor right now, and it would not be insane to add the ability to, open and go to a particular line number, but we don't have a language spec for doing so.
Okay, but it will be a notebook open, and then it
Yep.
would be a
That's the current proposal, yes. And then an option to notebook open.
why
which
isn't
would
it notebook locate? Given that you just told me notebook locate can go to a cell tag, why isn't there a stylized form of cell tag that means a line number?
Nope. Cell tags can be anything, including any string, including a string that looks like a
Why not?
number.
Okay, why not do this? Why not have this cell tag? If the cell tag is a list, which can tell, or something, let's say that the cell tag was, let's say that was the cell tag.
Right now, cell tags actual cell tags can only be strings. And not.
No, I know, but I'm saying that use the same. What's the syntax in notebook locate?
Well, open the help for notebook locate.
John, I didn't realize you were here earlier. And did you see that unbelievably slow startup?
Kind of, but the way that your screen sharing was working, I couldn't actually tell some of what was going on.
Okay. Oh, come on. We can do better than have a version 10 screenshot here. Please, guys. Come on. How many times do I have to say the same thing for the documentation team? Come on.
Well, there's nobody from the documentation team here, so.
Okay, but is there somebody from project management here who can take that message?
Yep,
do I have
I
to-
got it. I can send that over.
With some forcefulness, please. It's not the first time I pointed this out. Can we make sure we actually don't have these anymore? Okay.
So what
Yeah.
do you suggest, that every single version we find every single screenshot? And
I think we should
regenerate it?
try and genericize the screenshots. If this didn't say Mathematica 10.0, we'd be okay here. It's not great, but we'd be okay.
Yeah, and I guess it's still a Windows screenshot, right? Because you can see the menu there.
Yeah.
So
Well, but the top bar doesn't look real, is it? I mean, it looks like some fake
yeah,
The whole thing is crazy.
thing.
Okay.
yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it shouldn't have a version number. If it didn't have a version number, it will be much better off.
Not even sure
Yeah.
it should have a
Well,
product.
What's that?
Well,
It
so
shouldn't even have a product, right? This is
No.
genericized across products. So,
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
but the issue is that for people who are authoring under Windows, that information is in the
I know.
title
So we
bar.
have to give them away something in, some wires thing or something like that that doesn't by the way, down on our live stream points out for the previous topic that we could look at this. Let's do. Oh my.
It's, yeah.
Okay, that doesn't seem relevant to this. Okay, that's nice though.
You can also click the links and you can follow the definitions. But it's not super relevant. This is a old general utilities thing. I mean, and it has, you can see also it has this automatic formatting too.
Why aren't we using this? Why isn't this at least in WFR?
It probably is. This is one of the more famous general utilities functions, I think.
Ivory says it is in WFR. Okay. But then what can we learn from it? I mean, famous general utilities functions should be, should be promoted. I don't know what I mean.
Well, it's I mean, right. It's a typical Tolly hack that works in some cases if you're using a front end and, can crash your front end if you have too many definitions and doesn't work in a terminal. So
also we have a long list of potentially promotable functions that we need to go through, but we do not have a particularly efficient process for doing that across the many departments of the company.
And it's not part of, I mean, we've been doing the low-hanging stuff in ILD. This is something else we can look at after we finish the low-hanging stuff. Although we've also got lots of WFR things to look at. All right.
Well, okay. What I should specify in particular, it's WFR items, but many things from general utilities were placed in the WFR.
Okay, fine. And probably we did manage to pick the good fruit there. Okay, let's go back to notebook locate. Okay, file and tag. Yeah, this would be perfectly civilized. If we say file and then paren and then line number arrow 56. And just do whatever magic you need to do. I mean, if you consider it a tag, you consider it a tag, or you parse it out as something different inside notebook locate. John.
And would this also?
Sorry, you were saying it.
I was just asking, would this syntax also work in notebook open? I mean, I don't recall the syntax for notebook open.
Notebook open does not support cell tag mechanism.
Okay.
Which is okay. This is okay, because I mean, I didn't remember notebook locate did this, but that seems like the right place to put it. I mean, honestly, this is going to be part of bigger chains of tooling. I don't think it's going to be a raw thing. People say, "Oh, I'm going to open on line 56." It's going to be part of some debugger tooling or whatever else, right, guys?
Well, that's the most obvious application, but I could certainly imagine people wanting to have their own little
right. But this, since we've got a mechanism for opening out a line, which is notebook locate, that's what we should use. Do you object to this? It seems like a way to do it.
So rather than, I mean, does it make sense rather than a rule sort of thing to just interpret a number as a line number? Because tags up to this point have been absolutely.
I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with it being just a number.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
The only thing, what happens in a thing that is not line numbered, so to speak, like an ordinary notebook?
Well, it would be the same thing that would happen if the tag can't be found.
Which is don't move.
Which is that if the document is open, it doesn't scroll, and if it's not open, then it gets opened and just stays at the top.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I have a slight preference for this, but I think it's okay.
I mean, it slightly closes down an option if we ever wanted cell tags to be general expressions. But if we ever wanted cell tags to be general expressions, then every expression is like, but that could be a cell tag. So we're we're closing down something one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a cell tag that is a rule as well. So I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
If it's easier, I think it's fine to just be a number. Okay, documentation links. You say I have to be in a different
Oh no, it's working for you. Okay, I don't know why it's not working in my build. Right. So you see the little I.
I do. Looks
Yep.
a bit grayed out, but what happens if I click it?
Okay. So great. Yeah. It. I guess I guess earlier versions I saw weren't grayed out. So maybe
Well, I mean, I just think
withdraw
that
my
that
middle-
looks a bit too gray. It's okay to have it be light blue, which I think would be good, but I would just have it make sure it's light blue but not grayed. Does that make sense?
Well, I worry a bit about it becoming too loud. In early versions, it seemed really,
know.
really loud.
I know, which is why it was grayed down. But the point is, what I hadn't realized is by graying, it looks like it's non-functional.
I see.
Guys, could we try a light blue, for example, there? Design folk. Anybody
Yeah,
here?
Billy's here. Can you try that,
Right.
Billy?
It just needs to not look gray. I mean,
Yeah.
guys, Jeremy or Billy, just tell me what makes it look gray. I suspect it's that it's mixed with gray, not that it's well, I don't even know. I don't know what I'm talking about. But do you agree that that looks grayed out or not?
Yeah, it looks like it has opacity almost, and it might. I'm not sure.
It
But
is
yeah.
the same. It is the same art that's used in the top line of information output, because that was convenient for me to grab. So question mark plot. It's the same I that you get from there.
Yeah, but that's on a gray background.
I understand.
Yeah, so this just
Right.
isn't right. The hue is not right. But
Right.
well,
And the other point I wanted to raise is if you click on the pill menu.
Yep.
Then we have yet another icon there for the same link.
that's crazy.
Right. So maybe we want to standardize on the I, or maybe
Standardize on the eye. But does the eye want to come before or after?
Right, because it seems a little crazy that we have the button in two places also.
well, the
It
reason it's in two places is because this has a real message, right? If you did like sign with two arguments, you would not get the little I, but you would still have the pill menu link to take you to the ref page
For
Okay,
sign.
so it isn't in fact
for
the
sign.
same thing.
Yes. Right.
Okay, so hold on. If I've got sign,
Wait, so if the I is there, it always does the same thing as the book.
Oh, well, that was a stupid example because sign, obviously argex has a message page, but right. So what's a message? that doesn't-
Just make up a message.
yeah, just make up a message.
maybe make up a
Message
do
X
of
colon Y.
sign, do message of well, you'd probably
Yeah, actually, make it. Yeah, Itai's right. Make it sign colon Y.
right. And now if you click on the pill menu,
By the way, in 2022, we should be able to do better than -- message text not found. Come on, guys. Don't you think? Can we not?
At least
Eh.
hey, they weren't hyphens. That's a win.
Oh gosh. I mean, it just
But-
looks very, very, very entrails of the goat.
Well, I think it is. Did you ever see it? If you see this, you're
right.
in
I mean,
trouble.
right. I mean, the point is if a user actually sees this, then either they have a bug in their code or we have a bug in ours, right?
Yeah, all right, okay, but the dashes are just really entraily. Okay, all right.
Okay, so in this case, it went to the ref page for sign because it had no better place to go.
But it would have gone to the specific page if there had been a specific page.
But if
Exactly.
there had been a specific page, you would have also seen an I. The production of that I is intelligent. You only get
I
it if
understand.
there's a specific message page.
Okay,
Right,
but
so-
the eye here is just going to whatever it feels like. Or not whatever it feels like, but whatever it's casting the net wider.
Yes.
Right.
Would it be better if when there's a documentation page for the specific message, if the pill menu gave two links, so one for function page. So it would just say sign, and then
Yeah.
one above it, presumably for the message.
Yes. I think that's the
And then also the menu would be different when the I was present, right? So, that hopefully would sort of solve that confusion where, oh, well, this menu is the same, but sometimes I get the I and sometimes I don't. Oh, actually, when I get the I, there's an extra item in this menu.
Right. And then we keep the book icon for the sign, and
I don't know why we would do that. I think we could use I for both of them. We have multi-I things. I mean, multi-I, well, we don't tend to have multiple I's at the same time, right? I mean, here,
you're right.
So how do we feel about having multiple I's at the same time?
I think it would be nice if the symbols were different because the icons were different because they are doing sort of subtly different things.
Icon for what and what? For the message and for the function.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, okay, so maybe, but look, if we're using an I here, okay, so look, what I could see doing is having a gray I against the name of the message and having a book against the name of the function. How would you feel about that? Because I think the I here, this is an I, and that's giving the message specific documentation. So we got to have the same thing here.
Yep, I agree with that. And then using the book for the symbol.
Fine. People think that's okay?
Wait, sorry. I think I missed something. Using
Sign.
the book when?
Okay, so in this case here, not in this case, in this case here, we would have a stack of two things. It would say whatever the message is, sparse array no info, and that would have
you're talking about
array.
adding a new item.
Yeah, that's what Noah suggested.
Array. Okay.
Yep.
I like the I in the book. It also, the documentation symbol in the toolbar is a book as well. So, seems sensible.
Okay, question: the order of messages here. Do we want maybe the specific message and then copy message name, turn off this message, and then the thing for the function, maybe underneath that?
If so, there should be a delimiter.
Yeah.
There's also another item in this menu occasionally for showing the stack. There isn't here because there's no stack to show.
Right.
But so that comes before.
Does it have a delimiter?
Yes. So
okay.
Show stack trace.
So well, I just realized the possible issue. Right. If we have a separate line for the symbol, and we're only showing the symbol there, then when there's no I, we're never showing the message tag, the message name.
Well, do we ever? I mean, when there's...
Yeah, I mean, we're showing the message name right there.
This might be a dumb question, but why is the message name hidden in the message cell?
Because Stephen thought it looked ugly and scary. I mean, I was opposed to that. I think most of the people here were opposed to that.
I think it's been a big win, though. I think it makes things look less, by the time the thing is spewing og, toogle, wuggle messages, you kind of know you're descending into the swamp. I think this has been quite successful, this pill thing. But the issue is, okay.
I mean, I like the pill, except every time I actually care about the message, right, I have to click on the pill, which is a big pain.
Okay, question. When is it only when we haven't documented the message that we would not have an I item for the message? Right, that's the only case. It's if the message is there, but it isn't documented. Right.
Doesn't have a dedicated ref page.
Or a general message page, right? Because messages can be attached to general.
Why don't we just make a generic page that says this message doesn't have a specific piece of documentation, and then put the thing up here with its I menu, and oh well, sorry if you clicked on it. Well, we misled you a bit.
That feels suboptimal. I mean,
Yeah, it does.
the including both the the documentation for the message and then documentation for the function name. I think we were sort of pleased with that, except we hit the snag that then you don't always see the message name, and so I feel like solving that would be a better route.
Well, maybe we should just write the message name here. And if it doesn't have an icon next to it, it just means that's the message name and there's nothing to click. Or is it too weird to have a menu where something can't be clicked on?
It is weird.
Yeah, unless we had like a delimiter that, that somehow indicated that this is the title of the menu.
These are the eyes. I think this one is nice. That first one doesn't look grayed out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Any further objections?
Can I ask why is I for message and book is for symbol, given that I also shows up in the symbol autocomplete?
That's a reasonable question.
Or the design folks all need a hover state too, and the number 2 seemed like a reasonable hover state.
Yeah, that works out.
But now we're raising the possibility that there'll be a book there instead of an I, which would probably work. Comments from other people about that. Ian's point is not bad, that this.
Well, like start typing a symbol.
Yeah, I know what it does. I mean, it's.
I mean, I think we should probably solve it in the other places as well. For example, like in the toolbar, we use, a book for documentation. I think there are places in cloud as well. And then obviously the I is used elsewhere. We should, I don't think there's a reason to have both. We should probably, change all of those instances.
Well, except that in some cases, the book indicates go to the root guide page, whereas the I is more drill down.
Yeah, and the toolbar is a bit different because a toolbar is a search.
Which is basically going to the root with a search.
Yes, at the moment it's just opening the root guide page.
Now, in a perfect world, you might want to do a selection here, and then you press that button, and it would automatically search for that selection. That would be nice.
I can't remember if that works.
That's what happens now.
Yeah.
Oh. I didn't know that. Maybe that means I'm going to keep the toolbar open.
Is that any different from just selecting it and hitting Shift Command F like a sensible human being?
Okay, so let's try this. Let's see if I hit that. What do you know? It actually worked. Good stuff. Okay, Billy has the book version of this, which doesn't look bad. Well, I guess. Okay, listen, it seems like this requires some thought, and it seems like this is a Noah type problem, and I think so this problem, look, the choices are, what fraction of messages don't have a page?
I don't know.
Can I just say also, I was thinking if that doesn't necessarily have to be just an action menu, right? We could attach a cell there instead, and so we could put a heading that's, then we have more leeway in terms of design, right? So we could put a little header that's actually the message name, and then we can put the options underneath.
Yeah, except we don't want to repeat the message name.
Well,
true, but my point is just that we don't have to. We're not stuck to this format. We could use an attached cell and therefore have a bit more freedom as to what we, how we decorate it, what we put in there.
Right. Well, it could say like go to message page, go to symbol page, or go to message page, go to name of symbol. Instead of repeating the message name.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so
Right. So we have the
It
message
would have the
name up
message name at the top, and then it would say message documentation, or
Mhm.
go to message documentation. And then it would say,
Right, and at the very bottom, we could have, go to documentation for
well,
blah,
at the
or
bottom
go
it
to.
could simply say sign and have a little I next to it.
Mhm.
But then what are we going to do with the header, which has the message name? What are we going to do with the stack trace then? Is that's okay. That can go below the header, I suppose. Right? It would be the header show stack trace, then message documentation or something, or message. What are we calling it? Message. What are we calling that?
I think I'm not sure we have a name for it. I mean, we conventionally call them message pages, but that's probably not.
That's
right. But we could go. We could instead we could say something like help for this message.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
documentation for this message.
No, help for this message seems reasonable. All right, try mocking it up. Let's see where that goes. Seems like a decent direction.
Will do.
All right, data preparation cells.
Right. So this was sent to me as something you want to discuss in here, and I don't understand what problem you're trying to solve, because from my point of view, as the problem has been described to me, is you create a cell that creates an iconize, and then you copy and paste that, or just use Shift Command L.
I understand
it.
you. Yeah, I understand your point. Okay, let me explain the use case. Okay. I have a notebook. It contains some long-running code. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to be able to run this notebook without rerunning the long-running code. And the way I can do that is that I took the answer from the long-running code and I iconized that and I stuck it right in the notebook. But the long-running code is still in the notebook. I just want it to not be something that gets run if I just press Command A, Command, Shift Enter. But I want
another way of doing it would be, like the way I usually do this is that I just have it so that, if you run all the cells, that includes running cells that like create MX files, but then the cells that load the MX files are initialization cells. So the distinction is instead just, are you running everything or are you running just initialization? Yeah. But still with that workflow, there are cases where you'd like to do it with iconize, but you can't. I don't know what possible design would let you do it with iconize, but you can't, because it would have to run the long computation and then insert the iconized result into the initialization cell, which,
right.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work.
Do people understand this, the workflow issue here? Yes, no, maybe.
Right. So there's only from my point of view, the only possible issue is with Command A, Shift Enter, right? Because that data equals my hard-earned data could be an initialization cell, and then I normally just start evaluating and the initializations go, and then when I want to update it, I reevaluate my iconize.
The problem is, what you really want is something. I mean, look, another thing I've done is just make it a non-evaluatable cell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is.
I think that kind of defeats the point, though, because I mean, the use case I think is you want a notebook that you can distribute, where you can tell someone just run the whole notebook from beginning to end, and it would do what you want. But while you're working on it, you want it so that you have cached results. Right, and making non-evaluating cells doesn't help that, because if someone actually runs it from beginning to end, it just won't work.
Well, yeah, but actually, I think the more common case is you want that person to get the cached result. You just want the original code to be there in case you need to rerun it or they need to rerun it.
So I have a very rough sketch of what might work. Can I share for a second?
Yep.
Thanks.
Right.
Okay,
At which
I-
point, I think, just toggle comment is the solution, right? It's
So, well,
not ordinarily run, and then if the user
No,
needs
it's
to,
horrible. I've done that many times, it's really, it just is so frigging ugly, particularly if it's a multi-cell input. If it's multiple cells to create the output, oh gosh. And then it's commented, it's just ugly and really bad.
okay.
Okay.
So the idea here is that you've run something and it's taken long to compute. And because it's taken long to compute, a little sort of icon has popped up when the output is written. And then if you click on that, it'll offer to kind of, burn that data in. And, if we can work out what the symbol you might want to be, the assignment is, that then great, we could populate this input field, whatever. And then if you hit OK, then it kind of, it deactivates that input cell. And then underneath, it shows the thing that will actually be evaluated, which is just, data equals whatever
It doesn't
the
need the data equals. It just needs, in the default case, there's no need for data equals. It can just be, that cell, because that's equivalent to the output line having been generated.
Well, it depends if you're wanting to restore, if you're sort of almost wanting to restore like a kernel state, then this is useful. If you're doing things more with like percent, then
Oh, I see. It said data equals there. Yeah, I see. I'm sorry, I didn't notice that it said data equals.
Oh, in the input cell, yeah.
Right.
So I mean, this is, like, stress, this is not a proposal. It's just an idea of what a route we might want to go down. But
I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think that, what do we think about the possibility of that auto? I think it's pretty nice. I mean, I think the obvious place to put that, though, will be in the cell gear menu.
Well, actually,
but
here's a question.
You want it to pop up, right? You want it to kind of be.
If it took a long time.
Yeah, and also the fact that it's next to the output label seems like a natural place for it, because it's sort of, applying very directly to that.
Yes, Christopher, you were going to say something.
Well, I was going to ask, so how, let me see, how do you run the, how would you get it out of this state? Would you just press that
click
little
the
X?
close.
Yeah, and it would just get rid of this and then reactivate this.
Okay, is there a way though that, because I like, at least doing it with like MX files, there's this, I like how you can have the distinction between run all cells and run initialization cells that basically lets you choose globally what do you want to do. I wonder if there'd be some way of basically saying run this and ignore all of the pre-computed stuff versus run this and use all the cached stuff.
Right, because I was going to say, right, I mean, if Steve, I don't see how this solves Stephen's case of,
Let's look at the
computation
icon.
spreads a bunch of cells, because then you'd have to click however many X's to.
That's another issue. Okay, but in the case where this is iconized, where we say data equals, iconized range of 10 million or something.
Sorry, you want me to do this? Okay.
Well,
it's still,
No,
though, no matter what, this is a fair bit easier than the whole, you compute the thing, then you run iconize the thing, and then you copy the iconize, down into a new cell. Like that's more work for sure.
right, but so if this thing, and by the way, you could put up one of those burn things whenever you get an iconize as the result.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't really see the icon. Looks really weird. The icon seems like it's putting things in a garbage can.
I mean, this is a very, very rough sketch.
No, okay, no matter. Okay, but then in this case where we say iconize here, if we say data equals iconized, no, that's not going to work, because data equals iconized is exactly doing the wrong thing, because that has a stupid iconize in the middle. What you want is data equals the actual iconized object, so that the real thing that comes out is just the innards of the iconized object. See what I'm saying?
I mean, are we just talking about the formatting of the thing in the gray box?
No, I'm talking about the fact that if I say data equals iconized range of 10 million, okay?
Oh. Yeah,
The
that
data
doesn't
isn't
help
being
you
set
really.
to the right thing. Because what you want is the data to be set to the, the icon, not the original iconize input. Noah, you get what I'm saying?
Sorry, not quite. So if
Okay,
you're saying
look.
data equals-
If you say data equals there, data
Right now, say data, length of data. I think it'll work just fine.
I don't think so. I think it'll be 1.
No, surely it'll be
Yeah.
what?
Oh.
Yeah, because it evaluated something, right?
So head of data is iconized or iconized object. I forget
Yeah.
which.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, I don't understand how iconized objects disappear then, but okay.
They disappear in the same way that
They because they're basically inside of an interpretation box.
They format as interpretation box. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's not wrong, because you want to be able to pass iconized things around. You don't want them to evaluate and blow up in your face. The only thing that blows them up is shift enter evaluation. See,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
right.
I don't think I'd sort of internalize that. That's actually what happens. Okay.
Right. So the issue is you got an iconized result. Really, what you're trying to do is you're trying to refactor that code to say data equals the result, which is kind of what you were doing there also. Humph. Well, actually, does this not work? If you say data equals, actually, the way you've done it there, it would work, right? Because what you're doing is you're somehow parallel transporting, so to speak, data from the input to the output. The data equals from the input to the output.
Sure.
Right, but he'd have to read in the result from the output cell, not from %, which maybe he'd need to do anyway. But the point is that
yeah, that's right. So he's got to copy the output cell, so it says data equals whatever the contents of the output cell were.
I mean, I'm wondering, the presumption has been that the front end should pop something that sings and dances and rearranges, but this could be a kernel function that does this.
Explain.
I mean, it's something like iconized set of data, comma, range of 1,000,000, which then produces this kind of output input, this kind of memoized input results.
How?
Well, I mean.
So remember, John. Remember that the original thing that says iconized set, whatever it is, right?
So kind of.
I mean, it would have a side effect of kind of rearranging the input that produced it to do the right thing. But the point is, and you could then do this, with multiple assignments in a given cell, where they would just all aggregate into one, output nay inputs that serves as the memoized replacements.
I get it, but what is the workflow? Because when you rerun, you only want to use the memoized replacement.
Right. And what I'm saying is that this would essentially construct probably a cell group that that would redecorate the input cell to make it inactive, and provide an active input cell, that would be sent by shift enter instead.
So sort of like this then, but sort of constructed not through an interface, but programmatically.
Exactly.
Sorry.
And the way you have it constructed there, it looks like an attached cell. I'm not saying something that would be an attached cell. This would be an actual cell that would
I see. So this
serialize
is
and
like
save.
cell print. This would basically function like cell print.
It's like cell print, but it also has some side effects on the input cell that generated it. But it would always group with the original input cell. And then if you destroy it, it reactivates the original input cell.
I'm not completely seeing how this would work. Do you want to say it more explicitly?
Okay. So okay.
Here, let me give it. So I haven't. I'll confess that I haven't been 100% following, but let me take a guess at what I think you're suggesting, and then maybe that'll make some sense to other people. So you're saying so Noah has written their iconized set data range of 1 million, and that will somehow, right, that function would modify that input cell to make it unevaluatable and produce another input cell beneath it, which is data equals an iconized thing whose value is
correct.
The list 1 to 1 million.
And they would be grouped together to make it
Actually,
really, and there might be other graphical things we would do too to make it clear they're part of the same thing, but they would be grouped
not a bad
together.
idea. This is not a bad idea.
Anyway.
And then, we don't have to heuristically try to figure out, well, which assignments belong to which iconizations, because they were specified precisely in the inputs.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you had multiple assignments in a single input line, which I don't think is the most important case.
Well, I mean, actually,
the
that works really well, because we can then simply aggregate them together as a compound expression.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Now, John,
data 1 equals blob, semicolon, data 2 equals blob.
Minor technical question. Would this need the enhanced metadata where we've talked about in order for it to know which cell to modify, or?
No, because it's modifying the cell it's evaluating in.
So it would require a bit of trickiness, or I shouldn't say trickiness, a bit of new functionality in the front end where, it could recognize that, I'm in a cell group where, I mean, frankly, it would work today if the iconized thing were allowed to be the first cell in the cell group. If we prepended, this iconized thing instead of appending, then it could work in today's technology. If we prefer to append it, it would require a bit of new tech in the front end, but it wouldn't be that much.
But you're saying if okay. Well, I think it does need to be prepended. I think it's otherwise rather obscure.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's prepended, we already have a way for the first cell in a cell group to restyle other cells in the same cell group.
This is nice. This is a good idea. This is a good way to do it. Yep, very nice. All right.
And of course, one of the things that would be in the style would be evaluatable arrow false.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then you would evaluate it by blowing away the cache and recomputing.
Yeah. Yeah.
At which point, when you blow away the cache, it would become evaluatable again, and then you keep going. And the only thing that will be important is that you'll be able to copy the cache cell, but that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I can work with Noah to have a better or maybe even functional prototype of the ideas
this is very
I'm
cool.
thinking of here.
This is a cool idea. I like it. Okay, shall I go back to
I have a question. Why is this tied to iconize?
Right. I mean, in many cases,
You're
right,
right.
it's because the output is large in very many common cases, but it doesn't have to be a large output.
Okay, fair point. I mean, it could be.
Iconize also avoids the possibility that outputs contain formatting that is not parsable, like short, shallow.
Iconize is one case. I agree with you that I can imagine a situation in which you have just the list 3, 7, 18, and it took a really long time to compute that.
Yeah, I mean, there could be, it could be like a memoized set, or I mean,
Yeah, I don't know that quite works.
criticize the name, but you get the idea.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that quite works because of the fact that the iconize will sit in there. Right? In other words, unless the iconized is meta added to the process, having iconize, you see what I'm saying? Having iconize as part of the actual expression being evaluated will not peel correctly.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can handle that with two functions. You can handle that with an option.
Two functions.
Two functions might make sense because, if you have an iconized set, you might also want to name the iconized.
Oh yeah, good point. I think iconized set and just memo set or whatever the heck it's called. This seems very good. Very nice. I had not seen how to solve that. Nice. All right, let me just keep going for a bit here. Forms involving characters that parse to other symbols.
Right. So for example, if you type in, an alpha, then it parses to the character alpha. But if you type in the character pi, it parses to the symbol, capital,
pi.
Right. Right. So, this is not just me being, hyper vigilant. This is coming from an actual user bug report that.
Oh my God.
Was the user Greek? Do you know?
I don't think so. They were using pi. They were trying to use pi blank in a pattern for I don't know what reason, and were very surprised by. By the fact that it didn't seem to work, quote unquote didn't work. Of course, they didn't actually diagnose the problem, but wow. it's all
that's been obviously been there since the mid-90s.
Yep. So right. So it's not a huge priority item, but we should decide what we want the behavior to be, and then we can.
What would happen? What happens if you say f of pi blank? Does that work, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
then
that works.
Thing goes to pi squared. Does that work, or does that always go to? So if I say f of 7, yeah, it works fine.
Right. But you can't do that with the actual character pi. Or a lowercase pi, right? You could do that with a capital pi, but not with a lowercase pi.
What do you mean? If it paused, if this thing here just paused to the symbol, pi, at a low level in the parser.
Right. Yes, exactly. So right. So if you agree with me that thing should parse to pattern of capital P I blank bracket then yes, then it would just work.
What's the reason to not do that? It means that if you do it that way, I have no idea what happens if I do this. If I say hold of this pi, okay, what is
that? That is capital pi already.
So what the heck is this one here? I think it's just a bug in the parser.
Right. So if we're all agreed that it's just a bug in the parser, then we will treat it that way. And what I don't know is how much effort would be involved in fixing this bug. So
I suspect it has to put into the Lexa.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's that horrifying because these characters are not, just have to be careful in the Lexa.
Right. So yeah, all right. My opinion was it's just a bug, and that the pi there should act like a pi anywhere else. The fact that it's behaving weirdly is unexpected.
Yep. Okay, binding of pattern and alternatives. I strongly expect that that documentation comment was added because that's what I or somebody else thought it did.
Okay.
The pattern symbols that appear only in unused clauses of alternatives are bound to sequence, but it isn't true. I mean, I'd be very happy for them to bind to something much weirder than sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you use, I mean, this is the quintessential undefined variable.
Yep.
I'd be happy for it to bind to some, just like we've now got terminated evaluation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be perfectly happy for it to say unresolved pattern or something. It's a very corner case, like terminated evaluation. By the way, can I see terminated evaluation in action?
Well, sort of. Right.
I actually like empty sequence because I actually use it. If I have alternatives like that, I need to have a sequence if the pattern doesn't bind. I do use such patterns.
Hold on, we'll get to that in just a second. I'm wondering about this terminated evaluation thing.
Okay.
So the
Okay, so it's just inert from then on out.
Yep. Right, and right, you wanted so this is actually a question worth raising. There turned out to be sort of a technical issue with right, we wanted an expr struct with the thing that went bad in the second argument.
Yes.
And there turned out, I mean, there's a technical issue of we don't want to have to load the whole compiler at startup just in order to issue that message, and so, which is obviously a solvable problem, but I'm
but
not
it wasn't
sure
solved in this version. Can I make a suggestion? Could we format this in pink?
I would rather not. If this is not the intended final form, then I would rather not start adding.
Well, it's close to the final form. I just wanted it pink in the same sense that, oh gosh, that didn't work. How do I get a negative precision number?
You need a dot there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I needed the double whatchamajigamy.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's what I mean. I'd like to see that.
Well, I guess we can. I know. I think that would be a little weird.
I just think presenting it as just a be happy, this is a result, is the wrong thing. I think it needs to be like this one. It needs to be a little bit weirdified, and to have a mouse over as well that says, this was terminated because it ran out of evaluation, whatever. I just don't think it should look as plain as it does there.
Is it possible that when it gets returned that the front end line breaking will put the payload on a separate line from the head?
So what if it does?
I'm just thinking that the pink bordery stuff will look really weird in that case.
Okay, that's a good point. What does the front end do? I mean, isn't it just a framed? What happens if I just say framed of range of 200, comma, background arrow pink? It's okay. I don't think it's that bad. I mean, if it broke at the end of a line, beginning of a line, it knows what to do with things like that. It's just going to leave it as a a single thing. All right. Anyway, that's what I think we should do. But this, just pinkify this terminated evaluation. Does anybody object to that idea as just an idea, independent of how difficult it is to do?
Well, I mean, I mean, I think we could. I mean, I don't like it, but I'm not sure I can give you a very strong reason why I don't like it.
I just think it needs to say weirdness. I mean, it needs to exude weirdness when you get this.
All
right, anyway, that's my suggestion. If we don't have objections to it, we should try to do it. But let's go back to Nick's issue about sequence of nothing. Wait a minute. So what was your point?
My point or Nick's point?
No, Nick's point.
Well, my bug that I initially reported was simply about that sequence completely disappears from the hold complete there.
Well, the sequence doesn't disappear. It's not there. It was never there.
The point is that what's sequence hold and what's not.
No, it has nothing to do with sequence hold, right?
But you're saying the sequence disappeared because that sequence was pseudo-evaluated away.
Well, my claim is that Y was never given any value, and so yeah, if you want to call it pseudo-evaluated away, then sure. But
okay, but so if I do this, if I go to just wait a minute, what are we doing here? F. The heck do I need it to do here? This is if I go to X here.
Yep. And
I see. If I go to X and I go to Y, oh my God.
Right.
If
so
I go to
a more
Y,
interesting question is what, right. So in that case,
that's the case.
Right. So I think only in the case, and I think that's just replace all seeing, well, I ended up with nothing. And so I'm returning sequence bracket.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's a corner case in the code.
Right. And so then the question is, do we consistently want to bind every single, unbound, variable that only appears in an unmatched, unused case of alternatives to sequence bracket? And I'm not sure what the use case of that is.
Well, Nick has a use case, apparently.
Well, he said he has a use case. He has not provided a use case.
Nick.
No, I don't know. Well, when I have an alternatives, usually like a property, like if you have a property can be a string or a list with a string and arguments, and I can bind it with alternatives. And arguments would be a sequence, an empty sequence if I don't provide my property as a list. That's a use case. Very simple one.
That makes absolutely no sense to me.
Do you want to be more explicit, Nick?
Well, I can show you.
Yeah, okay.
I can just type it out.
Okay, here you go.
Something like if I have some object or function that takes a property like that and some arguments. And I want to use alternatives to do this. Oh, and property is a string. Like I want to use this pattern. And if I provide this function with just a property, I want the arguments to be an actual sequence.
Yes, but why do you care that args is an actual sequence? That I mean, I have written patterns exactly like that a gazillion times, and I have never felt the need for args to be a literal bracket.
The question of what you actually need is just for consistency and ambiguity. It's when I actually have a hold complete somewhere, inside of it. Maybe I want to preserve this type of save this argument somewhere. I want to be explicit that those arguments were an empty sequence.
I put some examples in chat. Wouldn't the consistent thing be its current behavior? That's what triple underscore does and what repeated null does.
Wait a minute, you got
Right.
Right.
You don't get hold complete of sequence. You just get hold complete.
Right. But the point is that you actually want the sequence verbatim. And I can even argue
Just
that
for
maybe
unmatched alternatives,
certainly
or
in the,
for all
right.
of
So in that particular case, right, args would bind to absolutely right. It would bind to the literal zero length sequence that gets inserted as no arguments. Now, if you want to make a claim of you use, you know, blank blank rather than maybe, but you know, then in that case, right, it actually matches this pattern. Right, if you have a null blank sequence there.
Yeah, make it double blank rather than triple blank.
Oh, I see. You have a list versus not a list. Okay. Yeah, so I guess it's unused either way.
Well, you don't even need a triple blank. You just need args blank.
No,
right?
but because in one of them there's right, in one of them there's a list and in the other there isn't.
No, I understand. It's not going to conflict. But you don't need a triple blank, right? You just need.
You don't need it, but it doesn't change the case he's making in this particular case.
Yes, it does, because it's much weirder to bind args to a null sequence. If args is a triple blank, it's much less weird to bind it to a null sequence. If args is a single blank, when do you ever see a single blank bound to a null sequence?
I see.
Yeah, that is weird.
Well, you do see it when it's bound to an unmatched part of an alternatives.
Right.
Like in that top case.
Right.
How about this case?
What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
No, it's a default. Why it's always not a 2?
But well, because it
Confusing.
didn't match. So I mean,
But
right,
it's got a default, right? So the question is, why did it move on to the or prop string?
because he didn't give a list, right? If he gave G of list containing
Yeah,
X, then you'd
let's
get
try
the
that.
2.
G of list containing X. Try it. G of the list with just X. Oops. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Either way, right?
No, did the right thing. Did the right thing there.
It's the right thing, but
Sure.
the point is that whenever you have a default binding like that, it should propagate to the right hand side. I claim.
I think I disagree with that.
It never sees that. The
But-
matcher
Yes,
never sees that.
it shouldn't bind the default.
Yeah, it's just like,
But
you
it's
know,
the
if you
same
have
question.
if you have multiple down values and you know the default has a side effect, right? You don't want it firing.
Right. But, you know, this is the same thing in both cases. Does the thing bind in that first example? Does the thing bind to a null sequence which is then crushed out of existence, or does it never bind? Or does it never create a null sequence?
Which first example are we talking about here?
The one at the top of the screen. The one that before Nick started sharing, I think. The one that he was showing.
Something like
Yeah, Y blank or whatever.
Yeah, I don't see why it would ever have gotten to the second alternative.
Right. So
The
it's the
matcher
same
never
issue.
gets
Same
there.
issue. that it doesn't bind anything.
Right. It,
But if
it
you-
literally binds 0 arguments as opposed to the expression sequence bracket bracket.
Okay, but change that to not be hold complete XY to just be a Y on the right hand side. Well, leave that line. Just make a new line.
Gonna be a sequence, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a sequence.
Right. And
It's going to be that case because back in the day, this gave a memory fault. Okay.
Okay.
It was a case that wasn't properly handled.
Right. And right. And you see, right. Right. I mean, this is sort of the same behavior of like, if you delete all the parts of an expression, you get sequence bracket bracket, right? You get some, if you literally end up with nothing, then the evaluator gives you sequence bracket bracket.
Yeah.
But you won't get sequence bracket bracket in sort of any other case.
I mean, arguably, now that we have things like terminated evaluation, you know, that's more the kind of thing you should get in these corner cases, in these quarterized corner cases, rather than something that pretends like it's a valid thing. Because this is a corner case. It's a weird corner case that you should never see. I mean, it's a bug, basically.
How's this a bug?
Well, this isn't a bug. The behavior isn't a bug. But
Okay.
the using an unbound thing, like in that line 46, using the unbound Y on the right-hand side is pretty much a bug.
I'm not convinced of that. How would, I mean, where exactly in the evaluation process would that even get noticed?
And
there's
moreover,
nothing
my claim
binding?
is that I think it's a feature. I think it's really nice to know which branch of my pattern matched on the right-hand side. And so I'll do things like if list of Y is equal to empty list, then do something.
Yeah, I can see that's a reasonable use case.
So even though the matcher never saw it, even though it had no opinion, it wants it to have a default opinion for the sake of using it.
Yes.
I can tell you
Okay.
how I solved it in my reimplementation of the patterns. I basically had like a different version of alternatives that had this behavior. And
Which
I have
behavior?
it's like binding all different
Right. So he
cases.
wants it, instead of it magically evaporating away, he wants it to bind to a literal sequence bracket bracket, which as Jeremy just pointed out, right, you can just test if hold of Y is, you know, hold bracket bracket, as opposed to if hold of Y is hold of, you know, sequence bracket bracket. I guess it needs to be hold complete. So it's,
Well, okay. Nick is claiming that his version is more consistent.
right. And
it's, I don't think any of the things we've said are use cases. Is what the heck is that match replace doing? I don't understand what your match replace list is doing in the first instance there. No, in that thing where it's ending up with Y's and X's.
Well, this is just actually, it just never visited this thing. So instead of not matching it, it's just left it.
Oh, I
like a-
see. It's returning. Okay, that's a different behavior. That's a completely different behavior. It didn't meet, I think that's a very, very weird behavior. And I have to go in 1 second.
wow, that's
It's basically because I generate matches, right? A list of matches there. Match binding rather. Because there are two ways of you can match, but each of them contains only a single variable. So if you do the replacement of all the variables on the right hand side.
Yeah, I understand. Then that simply doesn't get replaced.
Yeah,
I understand. That's also weird behavior. I mean, that's behavior that is not good for a down value. This is complicated.
right. I mean, I think we can all agree that %48 is a bug.
Let me see. Oh my
The
gosh.
removed of dollar variable of 1.
Yeah, that's a bug. What the heck is that?
This one?
Oh my gosh.
Right.
I mean,
the problem is you're using.
No, I see
right.
what that.
The pattern is inside of an except, so you're using the thing that's not supposed to match as the match, which is just the bizarre, right? I mean, one could also argue this is gigo because semantically, I think that makes no sense.
By the way, Ethan is commenting, you need except a blank question mark option queue. The heck is that? Oh, I see. That's an argument that isn't an option. Right. Oh, I need to go. I'm sorry. We need to continue this another time.
Okay.
All right. We had one more item, I think, which we got to
Can
another.
wait till next time. There's no rush.
Okay. Good stuff. Thanks, guys. We'll have to come back to this pattern matching thing. What a horrifying area. If you guys want to talk about that separately, that would be good. Okay. See you later. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.